Before nations had borders, before history was written in books, there was movement, restless, uncharted, and unstoppable. The land we now call Laos has seen generations of travelers, warriors, and settlers shaping its people, not just through culture, but through their very DNA. Every strand of genetic material holds a piece of this untold story, waiting to be uncovered. The rivers and mountains of Laos may seem silent today, but within them lies a history of migration, conquest, and survival that is written in the blood of its people. Laotian genetics is a window into one of the most complex human migrations in Southeast Asia. The story begins not with the well-known Tai-Kadai peoples, but with those who came before them. Long before the arrival of the ancestors of modern Laotians, this land was home to the Austro-Asiatic speakers. These were the earliest settlers, and their genetic legacy still exists today, subtly woven into the DNA of millions. They were the first to carve out a life along the Mekong River, adapting to the dense forests and fertile plains. Their genetic markers show ancient roots, stretching back thousands of years before recorded history. They thrived here, unaware that centuries later, another great migration would redefine the very identity of the region. Then came the Taikadai expansion, a force that would reshape the cultural and genetic landscape of Laos forever. These early Tai-speaking groups originated from what is now southern China, journeying southward in waves over centuries. As they moved through valleys and river corridors, they brought their language, traditions, and, most importantly, their DNA. They mixed with the Austro-Asiatic populations they encountered, forming new hybrid identities that still define the people of Laos today. Genetic studies confirm that modern Laotians carry a mix of these ancestral lineages, evidence of a deep and intricate past. But Laos is not just a single genetic story. It is a mosaic of diversity. Dozens of ethnic groups call this land home, each carrying unique genetic markers that trace back to different migration patterns. The lowland Lao, or Lao Lum, are most closely related to Tai populations, reflecting their shared Taikadai ancestry. Meanwhile, the Lao Viang, or midland groups, retain a stronger Austro-Asiatic genetic signature, preserving elements of the region's oldest inhabitants. The highland Lao, including the Hmong and Ming, tell an entirely different story. Their DNA reveals closer ties to southern Chinese populations, a sign that their ancestors migrated from the north, avoiding the river valleys that defined the movement of the Taikadai. The diversity of Laos is not just cultural, it is embedded in the very genes of its people. Geography played a defining role in shaping these genetic differences. The Mekong River, the lifeblood of Laos, was a highway for some but a barrier for others. While lowland groups expanded and intermingled through river-based trade and travel, highland groups remained genetically distinct, separated by rugged mountains and dense forests. This is why even today, certain genetic traits remain more common in specific ethnic groups, marking the invisible boundaries drawn by Laos's dramatic landscape. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell, each leaving an imprint on the genetic map of Laos. The Lan Xang kingdom, one of the most powerful states in Southeast Asia, saw the movement of people across borders, blending Thai, Khmer, and Vietnamese genetic influences. Wars, trade, and shifting political landscapes forced people into new territories, mixing their bloodlines and altering genetic distributions. This is the unseen history of conquest and migration, recorded not in ancient texts but in the mitochondrial DNA passed down through generations. Modern genetic studies have confirmed what history only hints at. Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA analysis reveal that Laotians carry genetic components from both northern and southern Asia, a testament to their ancestors' journeys across vast landscapes. Autosomal DNA testing has further cemented the deep connections between Laos and its neighbors, proving that the region has always been a melting pot of human movement. But beyond history, genetics also tells a story of adaptation. Some genetic markers found in Laotian populations indicate natural resistance to certain diseases, a result of generations surviving the challenges of their environment. Others suggest traits that helped early settlers thrive in mountainous or tropical landscapes. This is the power of genetics. It is a time machine, a storyteller, and a key to understanding who we are and where we come from. The story of the Laotian people is not just one of cultural evolution, but of biological resilience. And as research continues, even more secrets of their past will be revealed. Every DNA test, every study, every piece of genetic data brings us closer to answering the fundamental question: where do we truly come from? The land of Laos holds secrets older than its name, buried deep within the DNA of its people. Long before the modern borders of Southeast Asia were drawn, generations of travelers, settlers, and warriors left their genetic footprints along the winding path of the Mekong River. But who were these ancestors, and what stories do their genes still carry today? The answer lies not in temples or ancient manuscripts, but in the silent code of human DNA, passed down through countless generations. The history of Laotian ancestry begins long before recorded civilization, with early settlers who braved the dense forests and river valleys of what is now Laos. Their origins stretch back thousands of years, to a time when small bands of Austro-Asiatic speakers carved out an existence along the fertile landscapes of mainland Southeast Asia. Unlike the great migrations that would follow, these first settlers did not come in overwhelming waves. They moved slowly, their presence etched into the land through centuries of survival and adaptation. Though history largely forgot them, their genetic signature remains hidden, but undeniable, in the blood of the modern Laotian people. It was not until the arrival of the Tai-Kadai speakers that the genetic identity of Laos, as we know it, began to take shape. Unlike their predecessors, these migrants moved in larger, more organized groups, spreading their language and culture as they traveled. Their journey was not a simple one. It was shaped by geography, alliances, and the unyielding flow of history. Some settled in the valleys, others pushed further south, but all carried with them a lineage that would blend with those who had come before. This fusion of Tai-Kadai and earlier Austro-Asiatic groups created a genetic landscape as diverse as the rivers and mountains that shaped it. But genetics is more than just a record of migration. It is a blueprint of survival, revealing how the environment has influenced the very makeup of the Laotian people. The towering Annamite mountains created natural divisions, separating groups and allowing unique genetic traits to develop over centuries. The Mekong River, a highway for trade and movement, acted as both a bridge and a boundary, connecting some populations while isolating others. These invisible forces shaped not just how people lived, but who they became. Genetic studies today confirm this, showing distinct variations between highland and lowland communities, a testament to the power of landscape in shaping human evolution. Yet, Laos is far from a single genetic identity. Its people are not defined by one ancestry, but by many, interwoven through time. The Lao Lum, the dominant lowland group, share close genetic ties with their Tai neighbors, reflecting centuries of shared history and cultural exchange. The Lao Vieng, residing in the Midlands, hold onto stronger Austro-Asiatic heritage, preserving the ancient genetic echoes of the region's earliest inhabitants. Meanwhile, the Lan Xang, the highland dwellers, stand apart, genetically closer to southern Chinese groups than to the lowland Lao, a reminder of migrations that took place in a different era, along different paths. For centuries, these groups remained distinct, their genetic identities shaped by isolation and tradition. But history, as always, had other plans. The rise of powerful kingdoms, Lan Xang, the Khmer Empire, and later Siam, brought waves of change that altered the genetic landscape once again. Conquests led to the movement of people, intermarriages blurred the lines between ethnic groups, and political shifts forced populations to migrate, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes by force. DNA tells us what history does not always record, that the genetic composition of Laos was shaped not just by who arrived, but by who stayed, who mixed, and who adapted. Modern genetics has uncovered even more unexpected connections. Studies of mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome markers show that Laotian populations carry traces of both northern and southern Asian ancestry, revealing a more complex picture than previously thought. Laos is not merely a product of two migrations. It is the result of countless interactions over thousands of years. Autosomal DNA analysis further supports this, linking Laotians to their neighbors in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand, but also showing subtle distinctions unique to Laos itself. These findings prove that while Laos shares a past with the broader region, Its genetic story remains uniquely its own. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Laotian genetics is what it reveals about human resilience. Some genetic markers found in Laotian populations indicate natural resistance to diseases that have long plagued the region, an evolutionary adaptation forged through centuries of survival. Others suggest inherited traits that allowed early settlers to thrive in the challenging landscapes of Laos. Every gene carries a story, a piece of history written in biology, waiting to be understood. The story of the Laotian people is not one of isolation but of connection, of migrations that shaped identities, of kingdoms that reshaped borders, and of an unbroken genetic thread linking past to present. And as science advances, more secrets will be uncovered, offering deeper insights into the ancestry of a nation whose history is far older than the land it now calls home. The genetic landscape of Laos is not a single thread, but a complex tapestry woven by migrations, natural barriers, and cultural evolution. While history often speaks of kings and conquests, DNA tells a deeper, more personal story, one shaped by the land itself. The Mekong River, often called the Mother of Waters, has been both a guide and a guardian, influencing the movement of people for thousands of years. But unlike roads that lead in one direction, rivers flow unpredictably, shaping not just trade routes, but the very identity of those who lived along their banks. To understand Laotian genetics, we must first look at how the geography of the region dictated human movement. The mighty Mekong, stretching over 4,000 kilometers, acted as Southeast Asia's great highway, connecting civilizations, fostering trade, and allowing different groups to intermingle. Genetic studies confirm that populations along the river show greater diversity, a result of centuries of interaction between traders, settlers, and explorers. Yet, while the river brought people together, it also created natural separations. The communities that settled deep in the mountainous regions remained genetically distinct, isolated by terrain that made large-scale movement nearly impossible. This is why, even today, Laotian ethnic groups display such distinct genetic signatures despite sharing the same land. The Annamite Mountains, forming a natural border between Laos and Vietnam, played an equally defining role. Unlike the river, which encouraged the flow of people, these rugged peaks served as a genetic barrier, preserving the unique traits of those who settled within them. For centuries, these mountains protected indigenous groups from outside influences, allowing them to retain genetic markers that are now considered rare in the broader Southeast Asian population. The Hmong and Min, for example, show genetic links to southern China, but unlike lowland Lao populations, they have far fewer genetic markers indicating mixture with Taikadai or Austro-Asiatic groups. This genetic separation is not just a relic of the past. It remains visible in modern DNA sequencing, proving that geography has been as much a force in shaping human ancestry as war and migration. But while mountains and rivers define some aspects of genetic history, the most striking evidence of geography's influence lies in the way certain populations adapted to their environments. Over generations, genetic traits emerged in response to the unique challenges of the Laotian landscape. Studies of mitochondrial DNA have revealed markers associated with high-altitude adaptation in some groups, similar to those found in Tibetan populations. This suggests that early inhabitants of Laos did not simply survive in their environment, they evolved alongside it. Other genetic markers indicate resistance to certain tropical diseases, a trait passed down through generations of people who lived in the humid lowlands and relied on the Mekong for survival. These adaptations tell a hidden story of human resilience, proving that Laotian genetics is not just about where people came from, but how they endured the challenges of their world. Yet the influence of geography extends beyond biology. It shaped culture, language, and identity in ways that can still be traced in modern Laotian society. The Mekong did not just carry people, it carried ideas. The introduction of Buddhism, the spread of trade networks, and even the formation of early kingdoms were all dictated by the river's path. The genetic evidence of these interactions is undeniable. Autosomal DNA analysis shows clear links between Laotian populations and their Tai and Khmer neighbors, a direct result of centuries of movement facilitated by the Mekong. Meanwhile, communities that remained in more isolated regions developed their own unique genetic signatures, untouched by the same external influences. This interplay between isolation and connectivity is what makes Laotian genetics so fascinating. Unlike many civilizations that were shaped by conquest alone, the people of Laos were shaped by nature itself. Their DNA carries the legacy of a land that both invited and restricted movement, of a river that connected worlds but also created boundaries, and of mountains that safeguarded ancient lineages while separating them from the rest of Southeast Asia. As genetic research continues, more hidden stories will emerge, revealing how deeply the land has influenced the people who call it home. But one thing is already clear. The history of Laos is not just written in temples or ancient scrolls. It is encoded in the very DNA of its people, shaped by the rivers they followed and the mountains they conquered. Laos is often described as a nation of many cultures, but beneath its linguistic and ethnic diversity lies an even deeper complexity, one written into the genetic code of its people. Unlike the neatly drawn borders of modern nations, the genetic boundaries of Laos have always been fluid, shifting with migrations, conquests, and cultural exchanges. The Laotian people are not the product of a single ancestral line, but of multiple, overlapping waves of human movement, each leaving behind an imprint in their DNA. But what exactly makes the genetic diversity of Laos so unique? The answer lies in the origins, adaptations, and survival stories of its many ethnic groups. At first glance, the population of Laos may seem homogeneous, dominated by the Lao Lum, the lowland majority. But a closer look at genetic studies reveals a far more intricate reality. Laos is home to at least 49 officially recognized ethnic groups, each with distinct genetic markers that reveal different ancestral pathways. The Lao Lum carry a predominantly Taikadai genetic signature, closely linked to Tai populations. However, their DNA also contains traces of earlier Austro-Asiatic settlers, showing that they did not simply replace the previous inhabitants, but absorbed them into their expanding communities. This blending of ancestries over centuries created a population that is genetically similar to neighboring Thailand, yet still carries unique regional variations. Moving beyond the lowlands, the genetic picture of Laos becomes even more complex. The Lao Xang, who occupy the Midland regions, are direct descendants of the early Austro-Asiatic speakers, and their DNA reflects this ancient lineage. Unlike the Lao Lum, they show much less genetic influence from Tai-Kadai migrations, proving that their ancestors remained in these lands long before the arrival of the Tai-speaking groups. Their genetic markers align more closely with populations in Vietnam and Cambodia, linking them to a broader network of Austro-Asiatic heritage across mainland Southeast Asia. This suggests that while the Lao Lum reshaped the cultural landscape of Laos, the Lao Xang retained much of the region's genetic foundation, preserving the biological history of its earliest settlers. Perhaps the most distinctive genetic signatures in Laos belong to the Lao Xang, the highland groups, which include the Hmong and Mien. Unlike both the Lao Lum and Lao Xang, the genetic ancestry of these groups does not originate in Southeast Asia at all, but rather in southern China. DNA analysis shows that they share close genetic ties with ethnic groups from Yunnan province and beyond, proving that their ancestors migrated southward at a much later time. This migration route is evident in their genetic makeup, which retains markers commonly found in East Asian populations rather than those of the Taikadai or Austro-Asiatic groups. Their relative genetic isolation, caused by their settlement in mountainous regions, allowed them to maintain these ancestral traits with little external influence, setting them apart from the rest of the Laotian population. But genetic diversity in Laos is not just about ancestry. It is also about adaptation. Studies of mitochondrial DNA have uncovered genetic variations that reflect how different ethnic groups adapted to their specific environments. Some populations carry markers associated with high-altitude survival, evidence of long-term habitation in mountainous regions. Others show signs of resistance to local diseases, indicating generations of exposure and natural selection at work. These genetic adaptations are not just scientific observations. They are proof of the resilience and ingenuity of the people who have called this land home for thousands of years. While Laos remains a country of many ethnicities, modern genetic research is revealing just how interconnected these groups truly are. Despite their different origins, centuries of cultural and genetic exchange have created a population that is both diverse and deeply linked by shared ancestry. And as DNA studies continue to advance, even more hidden connections will emerge, reshaping our understanding of Laotian identity. The story of Laos is not one of isolation but of connection, of ancient migrations that shaped its people, of kingdoms that redrew its genetic map, and of a landscape that preserved and protected its diversity. Every Laotian today carries a history far older than any written record, a genetic legacy that speaks of survival, adaptation, and the unbreakable ties between past and present. For centuries, the rise and fall of kingdoms shaped the history of Southeast Asia, but their impact extended beyond trade, warfare, and culture. They also altered the very genetic makeup of the populations they ruled. In Laos, this was no different. The great Lan Xang kingdom, once a powerful force in the region, left behind more than monuments and legends. It left an imprint in the DNA of its people. This genetic legacy tells the untold story of how politics, migration, and conflict influenced the ancestry of modern Laotians. Before Lan Xang emerged in the 14th century, the region we now call Laos was home to scattered communities with distinct genetic backgrounds. The arrival of the Tai-Kadai people had already begun to reshape the population, but it was the establishment of powerful states that would truly define the next phase of genetic mixing. When King Ngum founded Lan Xang in 1353, he united various ethnic groups under one rule. But unity in governance also meant greater movement of people, soldiers, laborers, merchants, and royal families. This movement increased genetic exchanges between groups that had remained separate for centuries. As Lan Xang expanded its influence, its interactions with neighboring powers, such as the Khmer Empire, Ayutthaya, and Vietnam intensified. Wars and alliances did not just change political borders, they uprooted entire populations. When Lan Xang clashed with the Khmer, prisoners of war were often relocated, their descendants merging into Lao society. Historical records describe large-scale forced migrations under royal decrees, moving ethnic groups between different regions of the kingdom. These events, though often overlooked, are still visible in the DNA of Laotians today. Genetic markers shared with Cambodian and Thai populations reflect these centuries of interaction, proving that even in times of conflict, genetic boundaries were never fixed. Trade played an equally significant role. Lan Xang, strategically located along the Mekong River, became a key point in regional trade networks, attracting merchants from China, India, and even the Malay archipelago. While trade primarily moved goods, it also facilitated the mixing of different populations. Historical accounts suggest that traders often settled in Lao territories, marrying into local families. This is supported by genetic evidence showing traces of South Asian and Chinese ancestry in some Laotian populations, likely remnants of these centuries-old exchanges. The collapse of Lan Xang in the 18th century did not end this genetic transformation, it accelerated it. As the kingdom fragmented into smaller states, waves of migration followed. Some groups moved into Thailand, integrating with the growing Siamese kingdom, while others remained in Laos, forming new ethnic enclaves. The forced relocation of Lao populations into Thai territories under the orders of the Siamese monarchy reshaped the genetic map of both nations, creating deep genetic ties between present-day Thailand and Laos. But genetic history is not just about conquest and displacement. It is also about resilience. Despite centuries of change, Laotians have retained distinct genetic markers that set them apart from their neighbors. Studies of Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA show a strong continuity of ancestry, proving that while external influences shaped the population, they did not erase its core identity. This genetic legacy of Lan Xang is still unfolding. Every new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, revealing how a kingdom that vanished centuries ago still exists in the DNA of its descendants. The history of a people is never just what is written in records. It is carried in their very cells, waiting to be uncovered. DNA is more than a record of ancestry. It is a time capsule, holding the secrets of human survival, adaptation, and evolution. For the people of Laos, genetics does not just tell a story of migration. It reveals how generations have shaped and been shaped by their environment. Across the river valleys, dense forests, and high-altitude mountains of Laos, certain genetic traits have emerged, offering clues about how Laotians have survived in one of the most diverse and challenging landscapes in Southeast Asia. One of the most fascinating discoveries in Laotian genetics is the presence of inherited adaptations linked to altitude. While Laos is not home to extreme elevations like the Tibetan Plateau, its mountain-dwelling populations show signs of physiological traits designed for life at higher altitudes. Some genetic studies have identified variations in genes responsible for oxygen regulation in the bloodstream, similar to those found in Himalayan and Andean populations. These markers suggest that over thousands of years, certain Laotian groups developed a natural ability to thrive in environments where oxygen levels are lower, a trait essential for survival in remote mountainous regions. But adaptation in Laos is not limited to altitude. It is also shaped by disease. The warm, humid climate of Southeast Asia has long been a breeding ground for mosquito-borne illnesses, such as malaria. Genetic research has found that certain Laotian populations carry markers associated with increased resistance to malaria, a trait seen in other regions where the disease has historically been a major threat. This is evidence of natural selection at work. Only those with the genetic ability to withstand repeated malaria infections would have passed their genes to future generations. These findings show that survival in Laos was not just about where people came from, but how their bodies adapted to the unique challenges of the land. Diet has also played a role in shaping Laotian genetics. Traditional Lao cuisine has relied heavily on river fish, sticky rice, and forage plants for centuries. Some studies suggest that long-term dietary patterns can lead to genetic changes over time, influencing metabolism and nutrient absorption. Certain genetic markers found in Laotian populations indicate enhanced abilities to process carbohydrates, an adaptation likely linked to the staple consumption of rice. Similar genetic traits have been found in other rice-dependent cultures, reinforcing the idea that diet is not just a cultural practice, but a force that can shape human biology over generations. Perhaps the most unexpected genetic discovery in Laos is the presence of markers linked to detoxification. Certain ethnic groups in Laos have shown a higher frequency of genetic traits that aid in breaking down plant-based toxins. This could be a result of the region's long history of reliance on foraged plants, some of which contain natural toxins. Over time, those who had a genetic advantage in metabolizing these compounds would have had a higher chance of survival. This adaptation highlights the intricate relationship between humans and their environment, how the plants, animals, and even the diseases that surround a population can leave a lasting imprint on its DNA. Laos has always been a land of contrasts. High mountains and low river valleys, dense forests and open plains. The genetic adaptations found in its people reflect this diversity, proving that human evolution is an ongoing process, shaped by geography, climate, and the constant need for survival. Every genetic marker uncovered is a reminder that history is not just something that happened in the past. It is still being written within the very cells of the Laotian people. Genetics is not just a tool for understanding the past. It is a key to unlocking the future. For the people of Laos, DNA research is revealing more than just ancestry. It is uncovering hidden histories, solving medical mysteries, and even helping to rewrite what we thought we knew about Southeast Asian migration. With each new study, the genetic story of Laos grows richer, proving that the exploration of human origins is far from over. One of the most groundbreaking discoveries in recent years is the use of whole genome sequencing to trace ancient population movements. Traditional archaeology has long suggested that Southeast Asia was shaped by multiple waves of migration, but DNA studies are providing concrete evidence of when, where, and how these movements took place. By comparing the genomes of modern Laotians with ancient skeletal remains found across the region, researchers have confirmed that the genetic landscape of Laos has been evolving for over 4,000 years. These findings have challenged earlier assumptions, proving that the ancestors of today's Laotians did not arrive in a single mass migration, but in smaller, more gradual movements that shaped the population over millennia. DNA analysis is also helping scientists understand the long-standing question of linguistic and ethnic relationships in Laos. Many ethnic groups in the country speak languages from different families, Tai-Kadai, Austro-Asiatic, Hmong-Mien, but how these languages spread has been debated for decades. Genetics is now providing answers. Studies have shown that some linguistic groups, like the Tai-Kadai speakers, have strong genetic continuity with populations in southern China, confirming migration theories. But other findings suggest that language and genetics do not always align. Some Austro-Asiatic speaking groups in Laos show genetic links to populations far outside the region, hinting at ancient connections that have yet to be fully understood. This research is rewriting the story of how language and ethnicity developed in Laos, proving that the country's history is far more complex than previously thought. Beyond ancestry, genetic studies are also playing a role in modern health and medicine. Laos, like many countries in Southeast Asia, faces unique health challenges that have deep genetic roots. Researchers studying Laotian DNA have identified specific genetic markers linked to susceptibility to diseases such as diabetes, heart conditions, and even neurological disorders. These findings are critical for future medical advancements, as they allow scientists to develop targeted treatments based on the genetic profiles of specific populations. In some cases, these studies have even revealed unknown genetic advantages. Certain Laotian populations show rare genetic variants that may offer natural protection against some diseases, leading to new possibilities in medical research. Perhaps one of the most exciting developments in Laotian genetics is the increasing accessibility of DNA testing. As genetic databases grow, more individuals are discovering their own ancestry, connecting with distant relatives, and uncovering personal histories that were once lost to time. Laotians around the world are beginning to participate in ancestry research, adding new layers to the genetic map of their homeland. Every new DNA test contributes another piece to the puzzle, helping scientists refine their understanding of how the Laotian people came to be. The journey of Laotian genetics is far from over. Every strand of DNA carries more than just a record of the past. It holds the potential to shape the future. From unlocking the mysteries of migration to revolutionizing medicine, genetics is proving that the history of Laos is still being written, and its greatest discoveries are yet to come. History is often told through wars, kings, and written records, but the most unshakable proof of where we come from is not found in ancient texts, it is found in us. The people of Laos are not just the descendants of migration and conquest. They are the living proof of a genetic story that spans thousands of years. And as science advances, the ability to trace personal ancestry is becoming more accessible than ever. With modern DNA testing, Laotians around the world are uncovering their own genetic past, making discoveries that redefine identity, heritage, and connection. One of the most surprising aspects of DNA ancestry testing is how it reveals links that history never documented. Many Laotians taking genetic tests are finding unexpected connections to populations far beyond Southeast Asia. Traces of South Asian, East Asian, and even minor Central Asian ancestry are appearing in genetic results, reflecting ancient trade routes, unexplored migrations, and forgotten interactions between cultures. These hidden links prove that the story of the Laotian people is more than just local. It is a global story, one shaped by centuries of movement and exchange. For those within Laos, DNA testing is helping individuals understand their own ethnic background in ways never before possible. While cultural identity has long been tied to language and tradition, genetics is providing a new perspective. Many people are discovering that their ancestry is more mixed than they ever realized, showing a blend of Tai-Kadai, Austro-Asiatic, and Hmong-Mien heritage within a single lineage. These results highlight the deep interconnectivity of Laotian ethnic groups, proving that despite historical differences, their roots are intertwined. But the power of genetic testing goes beyond individual discoveries. On a larger scale, growing DNA databases are helping researchers refine their understanding of Laotian ancestry. Every new test result adds data that strengthens genetic mapping, allowing scientists to trace migration routes with greater accuracy. These findings are not just academic, they are rewriting the historical narrative, filling in gaps that written history left behind. With each breakthrough, the once mysterious movements of ancient Laotian populations are becoming clearer. For Laotians living abroad, DNA testing is also offering something more personal, the chance to reconnect with lost heritage. Many members of the Lao diaspora, whose families were displaced by war or migration, are using genetics to trace their roots back to specific regions and ethnic groups within Laos. In some cases, DNA tests have even led to the discovery of long-lost relatives, bridging the gap between generations separated by time and geography. These deeply personal moments show how genetics is not just a tool for science. It is a tool for identity, belonging, and rediscovery. Yet, with all its potential, DNA ancestry testing also raises questions. What does it truly mean to belong to a particular ethnic group? Can genetics define identity? Or is culture just as important? These are the questions that genetic research is forcing us to ask, not just in Laos, but around the world. As more people explore their ancestry, they are not just finding answers, they are finding new questions, new connections, and new ways of understanding who they are. The journey into Laotian ancestry is just beginning. With every DNA test, another piece of history is uncovered. With every discovery, the story of Laos becomes richer, deeper, and more complete. The past is not just something we read about. It is something we carry within us, waiting to be revealed. History is often recorded by those in power, but genetics tells a story that cannot be erased. For the people of Laos, the genes they carry today are not just markers of ancestry. They are living proof of survival, adaptation, and the journey of countless generations before them. The story of Laotian genetics does not end with what we know now. It is an ever-expanding field of research, revealing new insights with each study. And as technology advances, the mysteries hidden in Laotian DNA are only beginning to unfold. One of the most important aspects of ongoing genetic research in Laos is its ability to uncover connections that were previously unknown. Scientists are now using high-resolution genome sequencing to identify specific genetic markers unique to Laotian populations. These discoveries are helping researchers distinguish between different waves of migration, proving that the human story of Laos is far more layered than once thought. Some genetic markers suggest ancient interactions with groups from regions as far as the Tibetan Plateau, while others show deep-rooted connections to island Southeast Asia, challenging old theories about how populations move through the region. Beyond migration, genetic research is also being used to understand health at a deeper level. Laos has a long history of dealing with infectious diseases, such as malaria and dengue fever, and new studies are revealing how certain genetic variations may have helped some Laotian populations develop a level of resistance to these illnesses over time. These findings are not just interesting, they could be life-saving. By studying these genetic adaptations, scientists hope to develop better treatments and preventive measures, not just for Laotians, but for populations around the world facing similar health challenges. Another breakthrough area of research focuses on forensic genetics. With the growing availability of DNA analysis, researchers are beginning to reconstruct historical population structures, tracing how communities in Laos expanded, mixed, and evolved. Some of this research is even helping to resolve long-standing anthropological debates about the origins of various Laotian ethnic groups. By comparing ancient DNA extracted from archaeological sites with modern Laotian genetic data, scientists can now see a clearer picture of how different populations merged over thousands of years. But perhaps the most exciting frontier of genetic research in Laos lies in its potential to redefine identity. For centuries, ethnicity has been defined by language, culture, and geography. But genetics is now adding another layer to this conversation. As DNA testing becomes more widespread, people are discovering genetic lineages that cross traditional ethnic boundaries, revealing shared ancestry between groups that once considered themselves entirely separate. This raises important questions. How do we define heritage? Is identity shaped more by DNA or by culture? The future of Laotian genetics is full of possibilities. Each new discovery brings with it the potential to reshape what we know about the past, the present, and even the future of human health. With every strand of DNA studied, another piece of history is uncovered. The Laotian people are not just inheritors of a rich cultural past. They are carriers of a genetic legacy still waiting to be fully understood.